Ellie. On this episode, we're going to be making vegan chocolate chip cookies. These are the softest, most delicious vegan chocolate chip cookies you can ever make, I promise. This is Illy food. Yo, getting toasted. All those muscles. There are 4 special ingredients that you need for this vegan cookie recipe. The first is ground flaxseed. The second is a non-dairy yogurt. I personally love to use a coconut milk-based yogurt. The third is vegan butter or a vegan butter substitute. And then the fourth is, of course, vegan chocolate chips. So first things first, we want to mix our non-dairy yogurt with the ground flaxseed. So I add about 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed into the yogurt. Then I mix it up and let that sit while I prepare the rest of my ingredients. Okay, this is the really tough part because I always spill it. I just mix it right in the yogurt container. That way I don't have to have an extra dish. I can just rinse it out and recycle it when I'm done. You want to basically fill all the yogurt with flaxseed. So if you have a standard yogurt cup size, about 4 tablespoons of flaxseed will do it. And then you want to mix it up. And once it's all ready, it will kind of be like a gel. The ground flaxseed will absorb a lot of the moisture from the yogurt. And this is what our egg substitute is. One of the most difficult parts about vegan baking is finding a really good egg substitute. I found that for each type of baking, I need something a little bit different. For cookies, the magic came when I finally discovered that I could mix coconut milk yogurt with ground flaxseed to create a really thick binder. And this has worked amazing. It totally transformed my cookie recipe. It really makes the cookies soft and chewy. It keeps them that way. They don't get hard within a day or 2. This is really the secret weapon to delicious, soft, chewy vegan cookies. In my opinion, anyways. People have remarked that these are very similar to a very famous cookie brand that used to be available at malls. Maybe they're still available in malls. I have no idea. So this is what you want it to look like after you have mixed it all together. I'm just gonna let this sit and gel up. You can see it's already pretty chunky just from the time I've spent mixing it. So we're just gonna set that aside while we work on everything else. So now I'm gonna work on my dry ingredients, starting with the flour. 2.5 cups, folks. If I can get my flour open. I like to spoon my flour into my cups because I don't have a scale and it just ensures that I'm not getting too much flour for my recipe by keeping it loose. If you were to just stick your cup straight into the bag, you would condense and press the flour, which would cause you to potentially have more flour than you need. Flour is very finicky because it absorbs the moisture in the air, so anytime that you're working with flour, it is best to weigh it or spoon it into your measuring cup to ensure you're getting the appropriate amount. I'm very good at making messes. Next thing I'm adding is salt. I just use regular non-iodized salt. I eyeball it, about a teaspoon. Is about the size of the crook of my hand. I very rarely measure my salt. The next thing we have to add to our dry ingredients is our baking soda and our baking powder. We're gonna add 1 teaspoon of baking soda into our dry ingredients and then just a smidge of baking powder. That's kind of how I roll. I use just a smidge of baking powder. I have found that it helps in this vegan cookie recipe in order to get nice and fluffy cookies. So I just kind of eyeball it. That is just how I roll. I'm sorry. I use the same teaspoon and just get a smidge of baking powder. Like, it's probably about, if I had to guess, 1/8 of a teaspoon of baking powder that I add to my dry ingredients. We are just gonna give those a quick stir together. And then we will set those aside alongside our coconut milk yogurt and flaxseed mixture. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and get our vegan butter creamed with our sugars. basically smash it up. So I have a stand mixer that I use to do this. You could do it by hand, but trust me, it will take you a really long time. If you just have like a hand mixer, you can use that. Anything to speed up this process is beneficial. If you're gonna do it by hand, I recommend having really soft butter so that you don't have to use all those muscles. Just kidding. You probably have more muscles than I do. I don't have a lot of muscles. If you have more muscles than me, go ahead, get your arm workout in. I have tiny muscles. So those are going into a stand mixer, and I'm gonna cream the butter before I add in the sugar. I like to use my flat paddle on my stand mixer. You can use whatever you want, whatever gets the job done, but personally, I think this is the best. So let's get this butter going. We can have a dance break while butter goes. Oh my gosh, I never put on my apron, guys. Let me do that. So let's put this on before it gets too messy in here. Got blue apron today to match my blue shirt. I've had my vegan butter sitting out on the counter most of this morning so that it was pre-softened. Pre-softened? Softened? I don't know, is that a word? We'll go with it. So my butter is soft, and it's just creaming with my paddle attachment in my stand mixer. And that's gonna go for a few minutes. You may need to stop and scrape your mixer at some point in time in order to sort of reintroduce the chunks that get stuck on the paddle. My butter dance. Okay, let's check on this bad boy here. It's getting there. I give it a few more seconds before I add in the sugar. To my butter, I'm going to add 1 cup of brown sugar packed and a 1/2 cup of white sugar. I like to use a higher brown sugar ratio because it has molasses in it, which introduces more moisture into the cookie, which creates a softer, chewier cookie. If you like your cookies a little bit firmer, you can just swap out a 1/2 cup of brown sugar for white sugar. Okay. I always got a really small hole in my brown sugar bag, and then I wonder why it's so difficult to get the sugar out of the bag. My 1 cup of brown sugar ready to go in with my butter. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump that in. That was satisfying. And I'm gonna get that turning with the butter while I measure out my white sugar. Okay, so I've got my 1/2 cup of white sugar, and I'm gonna just add that in to my mixer here. And that's gonna cream together for several minutes until it's very light and fluffy. I'm gonna go ahead and scrape down the sides of my bowl and then let it run a little bit longer before I add in our yogurt and flaxseed mixture. It's getting nice and fluffy. I'm hungry for cookies. This is Fluff City. Fluff City, folks. Nice and fluffy, light brown in color. It is perfection. I am going to add my coconut yogurt and flaxseed mixture, which is now a giant pasty glob. You see how stiff this texture is? That is exactly what you want. Nice and stiff. The flaxseed has absorbed all of the water, and you get this nice like gooey, almost like oatmeal texture out of this. So we're just gonna add this in. I usually do it in 2 bunches. Just do a big a big glob, spoonful. And I will run the mixer for just a few seconds before I add in the rest. Get the rest out with my spatula. Go ahead on in there, buddies. The flaxseed will make your dough look a little spotty. And by that I mean speckled. And that's okay because now you have speckled chocolate chip cookies. You won't really notice it once it bakes, but the dough, you will see the flecks of flax. The flecks of flax. Try and say that fast. That's very difficult. The flecks of flax. This is what your dough will look like after you have added in your flaxseed and coconut milk or non-dairy yogurt mixture. And now it's time for vanilla. After you've added in the coconut yogurt or non-dairy yogurt and flaxseed mixture, go ahead and add in your vanilla. I usually eyeball it. Today I'm measuring it just for the sake of measuring it. I'm doing a whole tablespoon. If I'm feeling very vanilla-y, I might do 2 tablespoons. That is the fantastic thing about flavors, is you can add as much or as little or none if you want. Tablespoon's usually good, especially if you use a vanilla flavored yogurt. If you don't use a vanilla flavored yogurt, you might want to add a little bit more. Well, okay, start adding in that dry ingredients, remember? This guy. Ta-da! This is what makes your cookies cookies. I don't know if that's true, but kind of sounded good, huh? So I just add this in a little bit at a time, like any cookie recipe. Because you don't want a face full of flour when you turn your mixer on. So just a few spoons. Mix it up. See, this is like the actual messy part, so good thing I remembered to put on my apron. We're going to add more flour. I guess I usually do it in about 3 stages. Do it however you like. Getting cookie eat. Woof. Okay, now the last guy's going in. This is awkward. Awkward. Okay. Scrape my sides a bit. Oops, make a mess of it. It's kind of inevitable. Especially with flour. We have cookie dough. At this point, you can now add in your chocolate chips. If you like nuts with your chocolate chip cookies, you would add them in now too. If you want sprinkles or cranberries or coconut, anything like that, you would go ahead and add it in at this point. This cookie base can really be used for anything. Sometimes I add peanut butter to it. But chocolate chip is what we're doing today, so that's all I've got. So I've got mega chunky chocolate chips. These are the big guys, like they're big squares. I'm going to use about 3/4 of the bag, mostly because I want to eat the other quarter. That looks good. And then we're just gonna give this a whirl. And then I like to check it to see if I'm satisfied with the level of chocolate. I might actually do a little bit more. Because the best part about chocolate chip cookies is the chocolate. Duh. And then these will be ready for baking. Not bacon like bacon, but baking. You know. You know what I meant. I just say things weird sometimes. The last thing we need to do is scoop our cookies. I'm using 2 spoons because that's the best method, right? I think. Anyways. My cookies are going onto a baking sheet lined with parchment paper into a 375-degree oven for approximately 8 to 10 minutes until they're golden brown and delicious, because that's what we're aiming for. Delicious cookies. And then they're gonna go in my mouth. What is your preferred scooping method? Do you like to use spoons or an ice cream scoop? I always grew up using spoons, sometimes just one spoon in my finger. So I use spoons, but you can do anything you want, including, I guess, just your hands. So I'm scooping these out onto a baking sheet that is lined with parchment paper. I can fit about 12 on the baking sheet that I have. These cookies don't spread a lot, so you don't have to worry about that too much, so long as you got your flour right anyways. If your cookies spread out, that means you don't have enough flour. And like I said, flour can be finicky based on the humidity in your home, the temperature of your home. All of those things impact flour and its ability to absorb fat and moisture. So sometimes you might need a little bit extra flour after you bake that first batch. So sometimes with the first batch of cookies, I like to not bake as many and just sort of see how they roll, if they flatten out a lot, if they're too puffy, and then adjust if I need to. And that way I don't end up with too many wasted cookies. If you like really flat, crispity cookies, just use less flour. What happens is there's not enough flour in a cookie that spreads, and so the fat in your cookie, in our case the vegan butter, spreads out in the oven and you get a really crispity cookie. If you like a softer, chewier cookie, make sure you use enough flour. Alright, so I've got 12 cookies on my baking sheet and they're ready to go into the oven. Oh, these look really good. Yum. We have cookies. Look at this thing. It's just delicious. Looking, smelling. Perfection. This is really good. Yum. If you enjoyed baking with me today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you along on my journey. Now, let's get back to eating these cookies.